Ouran Highschool Host Club is one of my favorite anime. The characters, atmosphere, humor, and story of the show are amazing to me. It is also one of the first anime I watched, and I recently rewatched it. Hi, I am May, and since I've seen a few artists do screenshot redraws, I decided to do some redraws of Ouran Highschool Host Club screenshots as well. I find it fascinating to see how different artists would adapt the style of the show and wanted to see how I would do this. So in today's video, I'm redrawing 3 different screenshots from the anime. Let's start with the first screenshot. If you don't want any spoilers for the show, I would recommend skipping the next half minute or so, since I'll first explain what happens in the scene I'm drawing. This is from episode 1. Here, Haruhi dresses up in the Ouran uniform for the first time. She pulls away the curtain to reveal what she looks like in the host club uniform. In the show, especially, Haruhi has a pretty rounded face. I tend to draw more angular faces with clearer changes of direction. Since her eyes are pretty big, making the irises look around symmetrical was kind of a struggle. Her face angle was from the front but not completely symmetrical. In the screenshot, the hand on the right was very simplified. I drew it simple as well. Now on to some information about my experience of watching Ouran Highschool Host Club for the first time. It was one of the first anime I watched, and at the time I didn't know about a reverse harem genre or otome games. I discovered how much I like these things because of watching this anime. I really enjoyed the story, characters, and atmosphere of the show. As I realized I want to see more fandoms like this, I then discovered otome games like Cupid Parasite and Variable Barricade, and other anime similar to Ouran Highschool Host Club like Lovely Complex, Kamigabi no Asobi, and Pretty Boy Detective Club. And I have to say, before watching the show, I saw images of all host club members and was already suspecting Haruhi could be a girl, since her eyes are really big and her face looks a bit more soft. I like how she still manages to look pretty masculine though, and I like the way they represent gender in the show, as not defining who you are, what you like, and so on, at least for Haruhi. The biggest changes when you compare my art to the style of the show would be, in general, the detail of the shading. In anime, you usually can't have detailed shading because of time constraints and having to draw each frame. For illustrations, you can spend a much longer time on one image. The hair shading definitely has more detail. The eye shading is also kind of different. I tried to replicate it a bit, but still applied some things from my own style. I also added some more shading to the face. In anime, it's often just cell shading under the hair and maybe around the eyes or nose, but I added shading with multiple levels of opacity around the eyes and nose. Then I colored my lines a bit as well. I also added in varying line thickness, especially for the hair silhouette. I'd say my colors are generally more pastel-y and purpley, but a bit close to the show. Their colors aren't too saturated as well. I also noticed that in Ouran Highschool Host Club they use a white lighting outline on the clothes and faces many times. Okay, that's it for the first screenshot. On to the second one. First, a small explanation of what happens in this scene. This screenshot is from episode 4. Here, Tamaki first says, "Listen, Kyoya," and Kyoya responds, "Miss is the only daughter of our very important Todari client, so please be polite and try not to offend her." In this episode, Renge appears for the first time and Kyoya refers to her here. You can see how he is always business and profit-minded. Also, I like Renge a lot and how over-dramatic and entertaining she is. While drawing, I noticed that the eyes in the screenshot are higher up on the face than in my drawing, especially for Kyoya. For him, I also struggled with drawing the color of his uniform. Again, the hands in the screenshot and overall the show are pretty simplified. It made me feel kinda encouraged, since I saw that you don't have to draw hands very perfectly or detailed to make them look fitting. I made mine more blocky and thin compared to the screenshot. Then I noticed that the distances between the characters and their arrangements are pretty different in the screenshot compared to my drawing, so I was asking myself, should I keep it that way or change it so it matches the screenshot? I moved the elements around a bit so Tamaki, Kyoya and the chair would be aligned similarly, but it isn't 100% accurate. Whenever I'm comparing art like this, proportion-wise, it reminds me of those find the mistakes images in children's magazines. You're trying to look for anything that is off. As I said in the beginning, while working on this project, I rewatched Ouran Highschool Host Club. Making this video kinda motivated me, since I didn't want to be spoiled when looking up what scenes the screenshots I drew would be from, but also I just really wanted to rewatch it. I picked the screenshots to draw before watching it though, which is probably a good thing, since as I was rewatching the show, I decided to take some more screenshots as well, and by the end of watching it I had a lot of them, which would have probably led to a analysis paralysis situation. There I would have too many options with screenshots to draw, and having too many options for anything I draw, whether it's poses, hands, colors, or characters, easily overwhelms me. I can take a very long time with making decisions and overthink. So in a way, already having the screenshots determined for these 3 illustrations was good. To pick the 3 screenshots here, I also set some boundaries, like I didn't want to do a full group illustration and rather focus on just 1 or 2 characters per screenshot. Then I wanted to draw a few different characters as well as expressions and head angles. Here are some ways you could do screenshot redraws, and in the future I might try out using some other methods as well. You could rewatch the show and take screenshots yourself, or if you're not too concerned with getting spoiled because you maybe remember what happened in the show very well and don't want to rewatch it, you could also skip through the episodes just looking at the images, maybe with subtitles. Then you could also look for screenshot images on Pinterest. Very relevant scenes tend to be uploaded for most popular anime. And a bit about my experience of rewatching the show. I still had an overall idea of what the show was about, but I didn't know specific scenes anymore since it had been a while that I watched it and the anime was really good. Sometimes when something was happening, I would try to guess what happens next to see if I could still remember it from the first time I was watching, but this almost never worked out, meaning the show often takes a path I didn't expect, which I like. I also added in some small lashes in the end, but I'm not sure if I like them. For drawing the backgrounds, I basically used just the straight line tool. At first, I figured out the perspective by looking at the screenshot here. I also paid attention to the colors, that they would match my colors, but also the colors in the screenshot. I also imported marble texture images to put on top of the walls, which worked surprisingly well. I think that's what they did in the show as well. I love the look of the hall and the pink with brown soft colors. That looks really nice with the purpley or blue uniforms to me. For the final screenshot, I decided to draw one of the twins, Hikaru, and spoilers, this is from episode 16. Here he's on a date with Haruhi. Kaoru initially asked her to go on a date but let Hikaru go instead since he noticed how jealous he was. I like the twins' sibling dynamic other than the weird flirting with each other they act out in the host club. While drawing him, I noticed I tend to make the head and overall proportions longer often. Sketching in the face shape, eyes and hair was a bit difficult. I don't draw expressions like this often, especially getting the mouth and eyebrows to look right. To make him look surprised and not disgusted was interesting. As I was looking at the screenshot, I also saw that for Hikaru's hair, the volume distribution wasn't symmetrical. There was more volume on the left in the front part of the hair, but for the back it was more on the right, which was interesting to me. I enjoyed adding the cup. I don't draw objects often, but when it's not overwhelming like for a whole room, I like it. I also like the heart-shaped straws there, it's a nice detail. Also, here I talk a bit about my own opinion on the show's characters. So again, if you don't want any spoilers, skip ahead until this timestamp I'm putting up here. I found a really nice tier list of some characters, and so now I'll do this. I'll talk about the host club members in more depth, and I'll go over a few other characters as well. At the bottom of the tier list I have Eclair Tonnerre. She is rather manipulative and very profit-focused. I don't like how she wanted to exploit Tamaki. The host club member I like the least would be Mitsukuni. I honestly think he can be a bit annoying and childlike. I myself don't like the foods-obsessed characters most of the time. I also find he looks very young and cute, like a child, and this might come off a bit harsh, but I don't like children as age group that much. It's not like I don't like all children, I just prefer characters who look like they're in their teens or adults, since I tend to relate to them more. His MBTI type would be ENFP, and other characters with this type would include Venti and Kavi from Genshin Impact, and Sora from Ensemble Stars. Now moving up to the C tier. Here I first have one of the twins, which would be Hikaru. He is an ESTP, and I already revealed that I put Kaoru, the other twin, into the B tier, and he's an INFJ. I find that both the twins can be a bit obnoxious, like Mitsukuni with their schemes, but they're also pretty smart and funny often, which I find nice. I like how they might seem very similar when they're together, but when you look at their personality types, they're the opposite from one another. In that regard, looking at them individually, I like Kaoru a bit more than Hikaru. I tend to like a lot of INFJ characters. Some INFJ characters would be Suga from Haikyuu, Xingqiu from Genshin Impact, and Rei from Ensemble Stars. And characters that have Hikaru's type, ESTP characters, would include Mia from Haikyuu, Tartaglia or Child from Genshin Impact, and Rinne from Ensemble Stars. Next we have Takashi, another host club member, and he's an ISTP. Some characters with this type would be Iwaizumi Hajime from Haikyuu, Saino from Genshin Impact, and Jun from Ensemble Stars. He doesn't talk much in the show, and I don't have that much of an opinion on him because of this. He seems very reliable though, but maybe a bit boring, so I'm putting him in Z tier. Next I mention Umehito Nekozawa. He is the president of the Black Magic Club. He's pretty weird. I don't understand why he doesn't want anything bright, but he cares about his little sister, which is good. Next up is Benio Amakusa. She's also described as the Lady of the Red Rose and the president of the White Lily League and Zuka Club. While I find her entertaining, I also think she is overconfident and pushy when it comes to Haruhi. Next up is Ritsu Kasanoda. I like how wholesome and kind he is, even though he has an intimidating appearance. Next up is Haruhi's dad, Ryoji Fujioka. He's pretty funny, and I like that he's very confident and cares a lot for Haruhi. Now for a character I already mentioned when talking about the second screenshot, Renge. She makes many plot points in the story more dramatic and interesting with her commentary. I like her. Next I'll talk about Tamaki, who would be an ENFJ. Oikawa from Haikyuu, Baizu from Genshin Impact, and Chiaki from Ensemble Stars would be characters from other anime or anime games that have this type. Even though he can be a bit flirty and dramatic at times, he is a really wholesome person who wants the best for the people he cares about. He established the host club to make people happy and help out the other members as well. At first he seemed a bit self-centered to me, but over time I learned that most of what he does is to help other people, which is very kind of him. He's really funny as well. And finally, for the S tier, here we first have Haruhi, and I already said in the beginning how much I relate to her. I like how she's just a pretty casual, kind, also very honest person. She would be an ISTJ. Some other anime characters with this type would be Kageyama from Haikyuu, Zhongli Zhao and Tignari from Genshin Impact, and Izumi from Ensemble Stars. And from the host club members, Haruhi and Kyoya would be my favorite ones definitely. For Kyoya, I am the same MBTI type as him, an INTJ. Other characters with the type would include Kei Tsukishima from Haikyuu, Diluc, Wanderer, Alhaitham from Genshin Impact, and Shu from Ensemble Stars. Since I'm the same type, I relate to him in the way that he's very logical, trying to optimize everything and focusing on anything that brings profit to the host club. I'm similar in the way I use my time. I try to use it as efficiently as possible to achieve my art goals, having defined projects, goals, and a clear routine. Honestly, I feel like Kyoya would be one of the pretty few people that would understand how my mind works pretty well. While he might seem a bit cold, I find how he thinks and his honesty refreshing. Sometimes he can be a bit manipulative though. After watching the anime, I also watched this YouTube video, which includes a very nice summary of what happens in the show, and I agree with the opinion mentioned that the build-up for the final episode should have taken a bit longer. Only like the final 2 episodes are focused on the overall conclusion of the story. Speaking of the ending, I like that Haruhi doesn't end up with anyone, she just ends up as a member of the host club. I also really like how the first and final episode both include a scene of the host club together, at first without Haruhi and in the end with her. And that's it. Who is your favorite character and what would be some of your favorite scenes? Are there any other anime you would like to see me do screenshot redraws from? I could do videos like this focusing on just one show, or general ones with like 3 different anime for one video. As I said before, I took a lot of screenshots, so maybe I will redraw some of them in the future as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching and bye.